I never got to say goodbye. The day he disappeared from my life, I didn't even realize it. I was too caught up in my own world, too blind to see the sacrifices he made. Now, when I look back, every moment feels like a puzzle I failed to piece together in time. But the cruelest part? He saved me. And I never even got the chance to save him. The first time I met Aiden, I was drowning figuratively and literally. The river's icy grip had pulled me under, my scream swallowed by the unforgiving water. I had given up, convinced that this was the end, until strong arms pulled me back to the surface. His voice was the first thing I heard when I gasped for air. "You're safe. I've got you." I remember clinging to him, shivering, coughing up water as his warmth shielded me from the cold. That day, he became my savior. I didn't know then that he would become my everything. And I never imagined that one day, he would be the one drowning while I stood on dry land, oblivious. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't the kind of love that came easy. It was raw, messy, tangled in circumstances neither of us could control. I was the daughter of a wealthy businessman, raised in luxury, my future carved out for me like an elaborate painting. Aiden was the son of a forgotten man, a ghost in a city that never looked back. He worked odd jobs, lived in the shadows, yet carried a heart so vast that it could hold the whole world inside it. But despite our differences, he was the only person who truly saw me. When my father arranged my engagement to a man I didn't love, Aiden was the one who stood by me. "You don't have to do this, Evelyn," he had whispered one night, his voice heavy with something I couldn't name back then. "You have a choice." But did I? I was a coward. I didn't fight for him the way he fought for me. I let the world dictate my path while he burned himself alive just to keep me warm. And when he finally vanished from my life, I convinced myself that it was for the best. Until I found out the truth. Aiden didn't just leave. He didn't walk away because he wanted to. He disappeared because he had no choice. And by the time I realized what had really happened, it was too late. I grew up in a world of polished floors, crystal chandeliers, and expectations that weighed heavier than gold. My name is Evelyn Carter, the only daughter of Richard Carter, a man who believed that power and wealth could shape a perfect life. From the outside, my life seemed flawless: a sprawling mansion, designer clothes, an education at an elite university where everyone either envied or admired me. But inside, I was suffocating. Every decision had already been made for me. Who I would marry, where I would live, how I would behave, it was all mapped out like a business deal. Then, I met Aiden Blake, and everything changed. Aiden wasn't like anyone I had ever known. He wasn't born into privilege. He didn't have a last name that opened doors. He was a boy who had learned to survive in a world that had given him nothing. Aiden worked at a rundown cafe near my university, flicking burgers and serving coffee with a tired but genuine smile. I met him by accidentor. Maybe it was fate. It was my 19th birthday, and I had just stormed out of a high society gala thrown in my honor. The weight of fake smiles and suffocating traditions had finally become too much. In my glittering evening gown, I wandered the dark streets of the city, heels clicking against the pavement, tears blurring my vision. That's when I stumbled into the Rusty Spoon, the dingy little cafe where Aiden worked. Rough night? I looked up, startled. Behind the counter stood a boy with tousled brown hair, sharp green eyes, and a smirk that didn't quite reach them. He held a coffee pot in one hand, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. I must have looked ridiculous expensive silk gown, diamond earrings, sitting alone in a place where the scent of burnt toast clung to the air. "You could say that," I muttered, wiping my eyes. He didn't ask questions. He just poured me a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter. On the house. That was the night our story began. Aiden and I became something unexplainable. He was my escape, my rebellion against the life I hated, and I was his glimpse into a world he could never belong to. I started sneaking out to see him, trading elegant dinner parties for late-night walks by the river. He taught me how to live without a script, how to laugh until my stomach ached, how to sit on rooftops and count stars instead of problems. "You're not like them," he once told me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You're more than just a name, Evelyn." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. But love, As beautiful as it was, wasn't enough. Not in a world like mine. The night my father found out about Aiden, everything fell apart. "Do you think you can disgrace this family with some nobody off the streets?" he roared, slamming his fist against the mahogany desk in his study. I flinched, my hands trembling as I clutched the letter Aiden had written me, a simple note saying, "Meet me at midnight. I have something to tell you." "You will never see him again," my father continued, his voice like steel. "You will marry Christopher Langley, as planned. That's vital." Christopher Langley, a man I barely knew, but who had been chosen for me since childhood. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to scream that I loved Aiden, that my heart didn't belong to this world of cold contracts and business mergers disguised as marriages. But fear won. I never met Aiden that night. I never got to hear what he wanted to tell me. Instead, I let my father's words shackle me, and when I finally worked up the courage to break free, Aiden was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just gone. For years, I told myself that Aiden had left because he wanted to. I convinced myself that he had moved on, that I was just a fleeting chapter in his life. After all, he was a survivor. He had no reason to wait for someone too afraid to fight for him. So, I did what was expected of me. I played the role of the perfect daughter. I attended charity events, smiled for the cameras, and let my father mold me into the woman he wanted me to be. And eventually, I got engaged to Christopher Langley, the man, who was supposed to be my future. But the past has a way of creeping back in, and mine came crashing down on a cold November evening. It happened at a charity gala, one of those extravagant events my family always hosted. The kind where people wore designer suits and pretended to care about the less fortunate while sipping champagne that cost more than a struggling family's rent. I had perfected the art of faking smiles by then. Christopher stood beside me, shaking hands with influential guests, whispering the right words in my ear. He was polite, charming, everything my father had hoped for in a son-in-law. But I felt nothing when he held my hand. Nothing at all. Then, in the middle of polite laughter and meaningless conversations, I heard a name that made my heart stop. "It's such a shame about that young man Aiden Blake, was it?" I turned so fast that my wine nearly spilled. An older woman, a socialite draped in pearls, was speaking in hushed tones to another guest. My pulse quickened as I stepped closer. "What happened?" I asked, my voice tight. The woman looked surprised that I had joined their conversation. "Oh dear, you knew him?" Every nerve in my body screamed. "Knew him?" "Yes," I managed. "What do you mean, shame?" She sighed dramatically. "He was arrested a few years ago. Something about theft and assault. The details were unclear, but I heard he got into trouble with some very dangerous people." The world tilted beneath my feet. "That's not possible," I whispered. Aiden wasn't a criminal. He wasn't violent. He was the boy who saved my life, the boy who wrote me letters with ink-stained fingers and looked at me like I was his entire universe. Christopher's hand touched my arm, a gentle reminder to compose myself. But I couldn't. Not when my mind was spinning with a million questions. Where had Aiden been all these years? And why had no one told me? I couldn't sleep that night. While Christopher lay beside me, lost in dreams of our carefully planned future, I stared at the ceiling, haunted by the words I had overheard. Aiden Blake. Arrested. A criminal. No. I had to know the truth. Ignoring the voice in my head warning me to let it go, I slipped out of bed and grabbed my laptop. If no one was going to tell me what happened, I would find out myself. I typed his name into every search engine, scanning through articles, police records, anything that could give me a clue. And then, I found it. Aiden Blake arrested for grand theft and assault. The article was from years ago, buried beneath other forgotten stories. I clicked on it, my hands trembling as I read. It detailed how Aiden had been accused of stealing from Carter Enterprises, my father's company. My breath hitched. No, that didn't make sense. Aiden would never steal. He had too much pride, too much integrity. But as I scrolled further, I found something even worse. The evidence was provided by Richard Carter himself. My father. The room spun. My vision blurred. I had spent years thinking Aiden left me when in reality he had been taken. Destroyed. By my own family. I couldn't breathe. The words on the screen blurred as my mind raced. Aiden. Arrested. Betrayed. By my father. How had I been so blind? How had I lived my life, smiled at dinner tables, and played the obedient daughter while my Aiden was suffering? A sharp ache spread through my chest, twisting like a blade. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe there was another Aiden Blake. Maybe it wasn't my father's doing. But deep down, I knew. This had my father's fingerprints all over it. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I had to know everything. I needed answers. And I knew exactly where to start. Evelyn, why are you up so late? My father's voice was calm, measured just, like always. He sat in his study, a glass of bourbon in hand, the dim light casting shadows across his face. I stood in the doorway, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. Tell me the truth, I demanded, my voice shaking. He raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by my outburst. About what? I stepped forward, placing my phone on his desk, the article still open. About Aiden. For a brief second, something flickered in his expression. Then, he sighed and set his glass down, as if this conversation was an inconvenience rather than a bomb about to explode. Evelyn, that boy was nothing but trouble. You were too naive to see it. I felt my nails bite into my skin. He was innocent, wasn't he? That's irrelevant. He leaned back in his chair. The important thing is that he's gone, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. I shook my head, my pulse roaring in my ears. You ruined his life. You had him arrested. He didn't deny it. I protected you. His voice was smooth, controlled. You were too foolish to understand what was best for you, so I made the choice you couldn't. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. You destroyed him. You threw him away like he was nothing. And you expect me to be grateful? His gaze darkened. I expect you to behave like the daughter of Richard Carter, to stop chasing ghosts and accept a future that has been laid out for you. I couldn't listen anymore. I turned and walked out, my heart pounding so violently it hurt. But I wasn't the same girl who once let fear keep her silent. I had lost Aiden once. I wouldn't lose him again. I barely slept that night. My father's words echoed in my mind, poisoning every memory I had of my childhood. That boy was nothing but trouble. I protected you. Protected me? He had ruined me. He had ruined Aiden. I needed to find him. I needed to know what had happened after he was taken from me. The next morning, I skipped the charity event my father had planned, ignoring Christopher's calls and my mother's concerned messages. Instead, I drove to the only place I thought might hold answers, the prison where Aiden had been held. But what I found there shattered me more than any betrayal ever could. I'm looking for information on an ex-inmate, Aiden Blake. The clerk at the records office barely glanced up. You a reporter? No, I said quickly. I knew him. She sighed and tapped at her keyboard. Seconds passed. Then a minute. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as she clicked through files. And then, she stopped. Her expression shifted. Blake, she murmured, scrolling. Then she exhaled. Oh. The way she said it made my stomach drop. What? My voice was barely a whisper. She hesitated before looking up at me. You said you knew him? I nodded. She swallowed. I'm sorry, miss. Aiden Blake died 2 years ago. Everything around me blurred. No, I whispered. It felt like someone had punched the air from my lungs. No, that's not possible. Are you sure? The woman nodded. Records show he was released early due to medical complications. He passed away not long after. Medical complications. Died alone. Aiden was gone. I staggered back, gripping the counter for support. My vision swam. I had spent years dreaming of finding him again, of apologizing, of fixing what had been broken. But I was too late. Too late. And then, something inside me cracked. I don't remember driving back home. I don't remember climbing the steps to my father's office or slamming the door behind me. But I remember the way his eyes flickered with irritation when he saw me. "Evelyn, what is—" "He's dead," I choked out. My voice was raw. "Aiden is dead." For the first time, something in my father's expression shifted. A brief flicker of something guilt, regret. Then, it was gone. "I warned you not to dig into this," he said coolly. "What good does knowing do now?" I stared at him. "You killed him." His lips pressed into a thin line. "Watch your words, Evelyn. You sent him away. You destroyed his life. And now, he sees." I couldn't even say the word again. I wanted him to yell, to deny it, to show any sign that he had a soul left in his body. But he didn't. Instead, he sighed. He was a liability, my father said, as if Aiden had been a problem to be erased. I did what needed to be done. And just like that, something inside me broke beyond repair. I didn't feel like myself anymore. Something inside me had cracked, splintered beyond repair. The girl who once sought her father's approval, who obeyed without question, who swallowed her pain and smiled through the weight of expectation, she was gone. And the woman standing before him, she was ready to destroy him. "You did what needed to be done?" My voice trembled, but not with fear. With rage. "You stole his life and called it necessary?" My father sighed, rubbing his temples like I was just another problem he had to fix. "Evelyn, I don't expect you to understand. I don't want to understand." I snapped. My hands curled into fists at my sides. "You ruined him. And for what? So you could keep your perfect little empire intact? So you could control me?" His expression darkened. "You are being emotional. And you are a monster." For the first time in my life, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what I might do. "You have no proof of anything," he said carefully. "And even if you did, what exactly do you plan to do, Evelyn? Destroy your own family? Tarnish your name?" I laughed. A hollow, broken sound. "You think I care about my name? About this family?" I took a slow step forward. "You took everything from me. And now, I will take everything from you." His jaw clenched. "You don't have the power to, don't I?" I cut him off. I pulled out my phone and placed it on his desk, screen still lit. The recording app was running. His eyes widened slightly. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "I sent it to a lawyer before I came here," I said, my voice steady. "Everything. Your confession, your words, the proof that you ruined an innocent man's life." His face paled. "You wouldn't." I tilted my head. Wouldn't I? For years I had been his pawn. But now? Now I was the one calling checkmate. The next few hours were chaos. The press got hold of the recording. Investigations were opened. My father's carefully curated reputation crumbled before his eyes. My mother sobbed when she saw the news, not out of sympathy for Aiden, but out of fear of what would happen to us. Christopher called, pleading for me to reconsider, to think of our future I had already set on fire. And through it all, I felt nothing. No remorse, no regret. Because in the end, I wasn't the villain here. My father was. And finally, after years of silence, he was paying for it. The house that once felt like a prison was now a battlefield. My father had spent decades crafting his image, controlling everything in his path, his family, his business, the very perception of his name. But the foundation he had built it all on? Lies, deception, corruption. And I had just set a match to it all. The fallout was swift. Investigations were launched. News stations ran the recording on repeat. The headlines screamed about the betrayal of the prestigious Blackwood family. My father tried to fight it, but the more he struggled, the more he sank. His powerful allies distanced themselves. His business partners severed ties. His empire collapsed piece by piece right before his eyes. And I watched it all happen with a hollow satisfaction. This wasn't justice. Justice would have been Aiden living the life he was robbed of. But this was the closest thing I could get. A week after everything came crashing down, I found myself standing at a small, forgotten cemetery on the outskirts of town. The wind was cold, carrying the scent of damp earth. The sky was gray, as if mourning what had been lost. And in front of me was a headstone. Aiden Blake, 1994, 2023. A life taken too soon. My breath hitched as I sank to my knees, tracing the letters with trembling fingers. I'm sorry. The words broke from me in a whisper, carried away by the wind. I should have found you sooner. I should have fought harder. A lump rose in my throat. I never stopped looking for you. My vision blurred, tears slipping down my cheeks. I had spent my whole life trapped under my father's rule, too blind to see the damage he had done. And Aiden had paid the price. He had lived in the shadows, died alone, forgotten by the world. But not by me. Never by me. I pulled a single white lily from my coat, placing it gently on his grave. You saved me once. I swallowed hard. And even now, you've saved me again. A cold gust of wind swept past, rustling the trees, and for the briefest moment, I imagined it was him. Watching, listening, and maybe, just maybe forgiving me. I left my family behind that day. The Blackwood name no longer meant anything to me. I changed my number, moved to a small apartment far from the city, and started over. People called me reckless. They said I had thrown away everything. But they didn't understand. I wasn't throwing anything away. I was finally living. And this time, I was doing it for both of us.